Nobody thought he'd actually do it. Not his neighbors, not his family, not even the John Deere dealer who'd been selling iron to his operation for 17 years. But on a Thursday morning in March, Craig Holderman pulled 11 green tractors onto a commercial auction yard in Kearney, Nebraska, and walked away with a check for $1.89 million. By Saturday, those machines were scattered across 4 states, and by Monday, 6 brand-new Massey Ferguson tractors were sitting in his equipment yard, lined up like soldiers replacing a fallen regiment. The entire county talked. The Deere dealer stopped returning his calls, and Craig became the man who broke a multi-generational loyalty over a repair bill nobody thought would matter that much. This is the story of a fleet replacement that turned into a public execution, a decision that cost a dealership 22% of its annual revenue, and a farmer who proved that no brand is too big to lose when trust runs out. Craig Holderman farmed 4,800 acres outside Minden, Nebraska, corn, soybeans, and wheat on rotation. He ran a tight operation. His father had started with 640 acres in 1974. Craig took over in 1998 and expanded aggressively. He leased ground, bought out 2 retiring neighbors, and built his fleet around one philosophy: buy the biggest iron you can justify and run it until the wheels fall off. By 2018, he was running 11 John Deere tractors, 2 9RX tracked units for heavy tillage, 4 8R series machines for planting and spraying, 3 7R models for loader work and grain cart duty, and 2 older 6Rs he kept for backup and feeding cattle in the winter. Every one of them was green. Every one of them had been purchased from the same dealership, Schulte Equipment in Hastings. Craig wasn't just a customer, he was a flagship account. The relationship worked because Craig paid on time and Schultz took care of him. When a sensor failed during planting, they had a tech out the same day. When a hydraulic line blew on a 9RX in the middle of harvest, they overnighted the part and sent 2 mechanics to install it after hours. Craig appreciated that. He told people Schulte was the reason he stayed green. It wasn't just the tractors, it was the service. And for 17 years, that was enough. But by late 2022, Craig's fleet was aging. The 2 9RXs had over 7,200 hours each. The 8Rs were sitting between 5,800 and 6,400 hours. They still ran, but they were starting to nickel and dime him. A DEF sensor here, a transmission solenoid there, regeneration cycles that took longer than they should. Nothing catastrophic, just constant and expensive. Craig started adding it up. In 2021, he'd spent $43,000 on parts and labor across the fleet. In 2022, that number hit $67,000. He wasn't worried yet, but he was paying attention. Then January 2023 hit. One of the 8R tractors, a 2017 model with 6,100 hours, started throwing a drivetrain error code during a test run. Craig called Schultze. They sent a tech out. The diagnosis came back 2 days later. The entire power shift transmission needed replacement. Not a rebuild. Full replacement. Parts and labor, $58,400. Craig stood in his shop staring at the estimate. He called the service manager and asked if there was any way to bring that number down. The manager said no. Deere didn't make that transmission anymore. It was a discontinued part. The only option was a factory remanufactured unit, and the price was the price. Craig asked how long it would take. The manager said 8 to 10 weeks. Lead time on the reman unit was 6 weeks, plus shipping, plus install time. Craig did the math. It was early January. Spring planting started in late March if the weather cooperated. He'd need that tractor. He didn't have a backup with enough horsepower to pull a 16-row planter through 1,200 acres. He asked if Schulte could expedite it. The manager said he'd try, but he couldn't promise anything. Craig hung up. He walked outside and looked at the row of green iron parked in front of his shed. 11 tractors. Over $2.3 million in original purchase price, and one of them was about to be down for 2 months because a transmission that should have lasted 10,000 hours had failed at 6,100. He didn't make the decision that day, but the seed was planted. 2 weeks later, Schulte called. The reman transmission was back-ordered. New lead time was 12 weeks, maybe 14. They'd know more in March. Craig asked what he was supposed to do in the meantime. The service manager suggested renting a tractor. Craig said, "Rent? I've got $2.3 million in iron sitting in my yard and you want me to rent?" The manager said it wasn't ideal, but it was the only option. Craig said he'd figure it out. He hung up, and he called a Massey Ferguson dealer in Grand Island. He didn't know the guy well, had met him once at a farm show, but he knew Massey Ferguson had launched the 8S series and was pushing hard into high-horsepower row crop territory. He asked if they had anything in stock that could match an 8R's output. The dealer said, "I've got an 8S 265 on the lot right now. 265 horsepower, CVT transmission, front hitch, GPS ready. I can have it delivered tomorrow." Craig said, "How much?" The dealer quoted him $289,000 with trade-in value on the broken 8R at $94,000. Net cost, $195,000. Craig thought about the $58,400 repair bill sitting on his desk. He thought about the 12-week wait, and he said, "Let me think about it." He didn't think long. That night, he sat down with his son, Derek, who'd been helping run the operation for 3 years. Derek was 27, sharp with numbers, and less emotionally attached to the green paint than his father. Craig showed him the repair estimate and the Massey Ferguson quote. Derek said, "If we're spending $58,000 to fix one tractor, what's the rest of the fleet going to cost us in the next 2 years?" Craig didn't have an answer, but he knew it wasn't small. They pulled maintenance records for all 11 machines, added up every repair, every service call, every part replacement over the last 3 years. Total cost, $184,000. Divide that by 3, $61,300 per year. Derek looked at his father and said, "We're averaging $5,600 per tractor per year, just keeping them alive. And that number's going up." Craig stared at the spreadsheet. Then he said, "What if we didn't?" The next morning, Craig called the Massey Ferguson dealer back. He said, "I don't just want one tractor. I want to talk about the whole fleet." The dealer went quiet for a second. Then he said, "How many are we talking?" Craig said, 11. It took 4 days to structure the deal. The Massey Ferguson dealer brought in a regional sales manager from AGCO. They walked Craig's equipment yard, inspected every tractor, pulled hour meters, checked maintenance logs. They made an offer. Total trade-in value, $1.24 million for all 11 John Deeres. Replacement fleet, 6 Massey Ferguson tractors, 2 8S 265 models for primary tillage and planting, 2 7S 210 models for spraying and secondary tillage, 2 6S 180 models for loader work and utility duty. Total package price, $1.71 million. Net cost after trade, $470,000. Craig would go from 11 aging tractors to 6 newer, higher efficiency machines, less iron to maintain, lower fuel costs, and every unit would be under full factory warranty for 3 years. Craig asked about parts availability. The dealer said Massey Ferguson had a distribution center in Kansas City with same-day or next-day delivery on 92% of common parts. He asked about service. The dealer said they had 4 techs on staff and a mobile unit that could be on site within 2 hours. Craig asked what happened if something broke during planting. The dealer said, "We'll have you running the same day, or we'll put you in a loaner. You won't sit." Craig looked at Derek. Derek nodded. Craig said, "Draw up the contract." But Craig didn't want a quiet trade-in. He wanted it public. He'd spent 17 years as Schultz Equipment's showcase customer. He'd let them use his name in ads. He'd brought other farmers to that dealership. And when his fleet started failing, they'd offered him a 12-week wait and a rental tractor. He wanted everyone to know why he was leaving. So he called Gotch Feeding Corporation, a large-scale commercial auction company that ran monthly equipment sales in Kearney. He asked if they had space for 11 tractors in their March sale. They said yes. Craig signed the consignment agreement. The auction was set for March 16th. He didn't tell Schultz. He didn't warn them. He just pulled all 11 John Deeres out of his yard on March 14th, loaded them on trailers, and hauled them 70 miles to Kearney. By the time the Schultz sales manager saw the auction listing online, it was too late to stop it. The tractors were already cataloged, photos were live, and the farming community was buzzing. The auction started at 9 a.m. on Thursday. Over 240 people showed up. Some were there to bid, most were there to watch. Craig Holderman's fleet liquidation had turned into an event. Farmers drove from 3 states to see it. The two 9RXs sold first. One went to a wheat operation in Kansas for $187,000. The other went to a feedlot in South Dakota for $191,000. The 8Rs moved fast. 4 machines all sold within 30 minutes. Prices ranged from $142,000 to $159,000. The 7Rs and 6Rs followed. Every unit sold. Total hammer price, $1.89 million. Craig walked away with a check that cleared the following Monday. The Massey Ferguson dealer delivered the new fleet on March 18th. 2 semis rolled into Craig's yard at 7 a.m. 6 tractors, candy apple red with black trim, factory fresh. Derek took pictures and posted them on the Regional Farm Facebook group with one caption, "New iron, new color, same dirt." The post got 340 comments in 4 hours. Half of them were positive. People said the Massey Fergusons looked sharp. A few said they were thinking about switching themselves, but the other half were brutal. Guys called Craig a traitor, said he'd sold out, said he'd regret it when parts took 3 weeks to arrive. One comment said, "John Deere built this country. Massey Ferguson's just a red knockoff." Craig didn't respond. He didn't need to. The machines would do the talking. The Schultze sales manager called that afternoon. Craig didn't answer. The manager left a voicemail. "Craig, it's Tom. I saw the post. I wish you'd talked to us before you made this decision. We could have worked something out. Give me a call when you get a chance." Craig deleted it. Tom called again 2 days later. Craig didn't answer. Tom stopped calling after that. But the fallout inside Schultz equipment was immediate. Craig's annual equipment spend averaged $320,000. Parts, service, new iron, attachments. Losing that account meant losing 22% of the dealership's total revenue. The owner called an emergency meeting with his sales team. He wanted to know how they'd missed the signs, how they'd let their biggest customer walk without a fight. The service manager said Craig never complained. The sales manager said Craig always paid on time and never pushed back on price. Nobody saw it coming, but the truth was simpler. They'd gotten comfortable, and comfort killed the deal. Word spread fast. By April, 3 other large-scale operators had called the Massey Ferguson dealer in Grand Island asking about fleet trades. One was running 9 John Deeres, another had 7 Case IHs. The third had a mixed fleet of 5 John Deeres and 4 New Hollands. All of them had been at the Kearney auction. All of them had watched Craig's machines sell, and all of them had done the same math Craig did. High-hour iron, rising maintenance costs, delays on parts, and a brand that didn't seem to care as much as it used to. By June, the Massey Ferguson dealer had closed 2 of those 3 deals. 13 more tractors traded in. 13 more Massey Ferguson units delivered. The pipeline was full, and every one of those deals started with the same story. I saw what Craig Holderman did. Craig's new fleet performed exactly the way the dealer promised. The 8S.265 units pulled his 16-row planter through 1,200 acres without a single issue. Fuel consumption averaged 11.2 gallons per hour under heavy load. His old 8Rs used to burn 13.1 gallons doing the same work. That saved him 2,280 gallons over the planting season. At $3.40 per gallon, that was $7,752 in his pocket. The 7S 210 models handled spraying and tillage with 0 downtime. The CVT transmission adapted to load changes faster than anything he'd run before, and the cab was quieter. His back didn't hurt after 12-hour days the way it used to. But the biggest difference was service. In late May, one of the 8S units threw a hydraulic pressure warning during a night planting push. Craig called the Massey Ferguson dealer at 9 p.m. The service manager answered. He said, "We'll have someone there in 90 minutes. A mobile tech showed up at 10:40 p.m. with a full diagnostic laptop and a parts kit. He found a faulty pressure sensor, replaced it on site, and had Craig back in the field by midnight. Total downtime, 2 hours. Craig thought about the 12-week wait Schultze had quoted him in January. He didn't say anything, but he didn't forget it either. By fall, Craig's operating costs had dropped 18% compared to the previous year. Fuel savings, reduced maintenance, fewer service calls, and no catastrophic repairs. His cost per acre went from $187 to $153. On 4,800 acres, that was $163,200 in annual savings. The Massey Ferguson fleet had paid for itself in operational efficiency in less than one season. But the story didn't end with numbers. It ended with reputation. Craig became the farmer every Massey Ferguson dealer pointed to when a John Deere customer started asking questions. His name showed up in ATCO sales meetings. His fleet photos were used in regional marketing. And every time someone in the county argued about brand loyalty, someone else brought up Craig Holderman, the guy who walked away from Green after 17 years and never looked back. Schultze Equipment tried to recover. They launched a service improvement campaign, faster parts delivery, longer shop hours, loyalty discounts for repeat customers. But the damage was done. Farmers remembered the 12-week wait. They remembered the $58,400 transmission. And they remembered that when Craig needed help, Schultze told him to rent a tractor. By the end of 2023, Schultze's total sales were down 19% year over year. They laid off 2 techs. The sales manager took a job at a dealership in Iowa, and the owner started talking about selling. Craig didn't gloat. He didn't badmouth Schultze publicly. When people asked him why he switched, he just said the numbers didn't work anymore. That was it. No drama, no emotion, just economics. But everyone understood what he meant. Loyalty only lasts as long as the relationship is worth keeping. And the moment a brand stops taking care of you, the paint color stops mattering. In November 2024, Craig added a 7th Massey Ferguson to his fleet, a used 8S 225 with 1,400 hours. He bought it from a retiring farmer in Kansas who'd switched from Deere 2 years earlier. Craig asked him why he'd made the move. The guy said, "I got tired of waiting on parts." Craig nodded. He knew exactly what that meant. Derek, Craig's son, now runs most of the day-to-day operations. He's never farmed with green iron. He doesn't have the emotional attachment his father once did. To him, the Massey Fergusons are just tools. And they work. That's all that matters. But Craig still remembers what it felt like to walk away from 17 years of loyalty. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fun, but it was necessary. He drove past the Schultze dealership once in early 2024. There were fewer tractors on the lot than he remembered. The building looked the same, but something felt different. Emptier. He didn't stop. He just kept driving. There was nothing left to say. The decision had already been made. The fleet had already been replaced, and the results spoke louder than any conversation ever could. The 11 John Deeres Craig sold are still out there, scattered across farms in Kansas, South Dakota, Iowa, and Missouri. Some are still running. Some have already been traded in again. But none of them are in Minden, Nebraska, and none of them carry the name of the farmer who built his entire operation around them. Craig's 6 Massey Ferguson tractors are still parked in the same equipment yard where the green iron used to sit. They run the same ground, they pull the same implements, they do the same work, but they do it cheaper, faster, and with less drama. That's the difference between loyalty and performance. Loyalty is emotional, performance is measurable. And when the two stop aligning, one of them has to go. Craig chose performance, and he's never regretted it. The Massey Ferguson dealer in Grand Island still tells the story. When a big account customer starts asking about switching colors, the dealer says, "Let me tell you about a guy who traded 11 John Deeres in one day." And then he shows them the pictures. 6 red tractors lined up in front of a barn. A fleet replacement that turned into a case study. A decision that cost one dealership a fifth of its revenue and made another dealership's year. Tom, the Schultze sales manager, eventually left the dealership. He works for a construction equipment company now. Doesn't sell tractors anymore. When people ask him why he got out of ag equipment, he doesn't talk about market conditions or industry consolidation. He just says, "I got tired of losing customers I thought were locked in." He never mentions Craig by name, but he doesn't have to. Everyone knows who he's talking about. Craig still farms 4,800 acres, still runs Massey Ferguson, still pays his bills on time, and still shows up at the co-op and the grain elevator like nothing ever changed. Because for him, nothing did. He just swapped out the tools that weren't working for ones that did. The dirt doesn't care what color the tractor is. The crops don't know the difference between a CVT and a power shift. All that matters is whether the work gets done, and it does. But every now and then, when Craig fires up one of the 8S265s and feels the torque curve pull smooth through a heavy load, he thinks about that broken transmission, the one that started everything. The $58,400 repair bill, the 12-week wait, the suggestion to rent a tractor. And he wonders how many other farmers are sitting in their shops right now, staring at an estimate, adding up the years of loyalty, and asking themselves the same question he did. Is the brand worth it anymore? For Craig, the answer was no. And once he accepted that, the rest was easy. The tractors are just machines. The paint is just color. But the relationship is everything. And when that breaks, no amount of heritage or market share or dealer network can fix it. You either rebuild the trust or you lose the customer. Schultze didn't rebuild it. So Craig walked. And he took $320,000 a year with him. That's the cost of taking loyalty for granted, and it's a hell of a lot more expensive than a transmission.